Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So the Conservatives are saying Rachel Reeves should resign because she let her vacant property after becoming Chancellor, but she didn't get a landlord's licence. How is there such a thing as a landlord's licence? No, almost everywhere there's no such thing as a landlord's licence. So it's not widely known about that it exists anywhere. An incredibly obvious inadvertent mistake, yet the Tories deliberately break the rules all the time and they don't resign. Let's take a look at a few of the hotbed of rampant hypocrisy here. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So, first of all, what's all the fuss with Rachel Reeves? So, as Chancellor, she is expected to live at Downing Street next door to the Prime Minister. This meant that she was a property vacant. Now, with the shortage of housing, thanks to the Tories, only a fool would suggest she should have left her property vacant for a few years, so she let it out. However, in this particular part of the country, you need a landlord's licence. It's not a common thing. I'd never heard of such a beast before this furore in the Daily Mail. So, given that this licence isn't actually a thing for almost the whole country, it's understandable that Reeves would not have known of the need for it. And it's not even like she let the property privately. She hired a letting agency to sort out the details. And they didn't tell her about it either. Remember, the reason that Angela Rayner had to resign was not because she fell foul of some stupendously obscure tax rule that only top experts even know about. It's because she had been advised in writing to get specialist legal advice and didn't. But Reeves was not advised of any such thing. So anyone trying to make anything of this is just being silly. Reeves had no idea about the licence. Nobody had told her. When somebody did, she immediately took action to apply for it. Can't say fairer than that. But Badenoch wants Reeves to resign. Stupendous hypocrisy from the woman who admitted to illegally hacking into a senior MP's website, an offence which can carry a prison sentence of up to 5 years if she'd been caught and prosecuted at the time. Because I would suggest there are different types of rules breaking. There's the ones you do inadvertently, and there's the ones where you know you're doing it and you don't care. And recent Tory history is awash with the latter case. Take Robert Jenrick, for example. He's been breaking the law. He's been filming himself breaking the law. He hasn't resigned. When he filmed on the London Underground without permission, he was breaking the rules. Now, I am prepared to believe he may not have realised he was breaking the rules. However, when he illegally shinned up a lamppost for a photo op to stick a flag on it, he will certainly have known he was breaking the law then. Why hasn't Jenrick resigned? But there are much worse cases than that. I mean, let's start for real with the one we all remember, the scandal that perfectly sums up the one rule for them, another for us attitude, Partygate. Here's the scene. Throughout the chunks of 2020 and 2021, the entire country was under strict COVID-19 lockdown rules. People missed funerals. Families were separated. The Queen sat alone at the funeral of her husband of 70 years. The message from Boris Johnson's government was relentless. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. But while the nation sacrificed, a very different reality was unfolding inside number 10 Downing Street. A string of gatherings, leaving parties, Christmas celebrations were taking place, fueled by suitcases of wine and DJ sets. The fact they had to go out and they were bringing back into Downing Street wine and cheese in suitcases was because they knew they needed to hide it. They wanted to get it past the photographers outside. So they knew they were breaking the rules, their own rules. All with a stunning disregard for the laws being made in that very building. In fact, one such illegal party took place on the eve of Prince Philip's funeral. It was later revealed that the government told the Queen that she could waive the usual rules for her husband's funeral to allow more people to attend. She refused. The whole country were in this together. They were sacrificing. Why shouldn't she? That was her attitude. She did her part, a sentiment not shared by Boris Johnson. When the evidence finally tumbled out, it was damning. Leaked photos, whistleblower testimony, and the official Sue Gray report laid it all bare, confirming failures of leadership and judgment, and a culture where these events should never have happened. The Metropolitan Police investigated. They issued 126 fines for breaking lockdown laws, including to the Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his then Chancellor Rishi Sunak. They literally broke their own law and didn't resign. If Partygate was brazen, another scandal just, round about the same time, showed a government willing to not just break the rules, but rewrite that rule book entirely, but without telling anyone else. This was the Owen Patterson affair. Owen Patterson was a senior Conservative. He was also a paid consultant for 2 companies, earning over £100,000 a year on top of his MP salary. The problem? He used his parliamentary access and position to lobby for those companies, dead against the rules. An investigation by the Parliamentary Commission for Standards found him guilty of an egregious breach of the rules. The Cross-Party Standards Committee recommended a 30-day suspension from Parliament. Now, that would have been case closed. 30 days, garden leave, then he'd be back again, no problems. A clear breach, a clear punishment. But it wasn't. Instead of accepting the outcome, Boris Johnson's government ordered its MPs to vote to not just vote the punishment down, but to scrap the entire standard system and create a new Tory-led committee to rethink Patterson's case. Jaw-dropping move, effectively trying to fire the referee for making a call you don't like and replace them with the referee who'll do exactly what you say. The getaway here almost worked. For 24 hours, it looked like they'd pulled it off, but the public and media backlash was so furious that the government was forced into a humiliating U-turn. Facing a new vote he would now lose, Owen Patterson resigned, claiming he wanted to leave the cruel world of politics. What's an MP to do when they can't even make 100 grand corruptly on the side? The real story, though, isn't that he quit. It's that the government tried to save him, revealing a willingness to bulldoze ethics procedures just to protect one of their own. This next scandal isn't about a party or a single politician. It's about a system created during a crisis that funneled billions of pounds of public money to the politically connected. Welcome to the infamous VIP lane. When the pandemic hit in 2020, there was a desperate scramble for personal protective equipment. The government, under huge pressure to get masks, gowns and so on, set up a special high priority lane for companies recommended by ministers, MPs and officials. This became known as the VIP lane. What happened next was a flood of contracts awarded with little to no proper scrutiny. Companies with zero experience in medical supplies, but plenty of experience being Tory donors and drinking buddies, were handed multi-million-pound deals. The result? Disaster. Watchdogs found that billions were spent on PPE that was useless, substandard, or in some cases never even showed up. A High Court judge later ruled the VIP lane was unlawful and breached the obligation of equal treatment. So where was the accountability for overseeing this mess? This is the heart of the getaway. There wasn't any. Despite the High Court declaring the process illegal, not a single minister faced consequences for their role. Not Boris Johnson, not Rishi Sunak, not Michael Gove, not Matt Hancock. Billions of taxpayer pounds were wasted while friends and donors of the party got rich. The whole affair was simply excused as an emergency. Final scandal, just over the last few years, isn't just about misconduct. It's about what happens when an organisation knows it's got a problem and covers it up until it explodes. We are, of course, talking about Chris Pincher and how lying to protect him actually finally ended a Prime Minister's career. June 2022, Chris Pincher, the Conservative Deputy Chief Whip, resigned after being accused of groping 2 men at a private members' club. Downing Street's initial response was to claim that Prime Minister Boris Johnson was not aware of any specific allegations about Pincher when he appointed him. This was a lie. It was a lie that fell apart almost immediately. It soon emerged that Johnson had been told about prior allegations and that in actual fact Pincher's behaviour was something of an open secret in Westminster. For a government already drowning in scandal at this point, this lie was the final straw. It triggered a massive wave of resignations led by Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Health Secretary Sajid Javid. Within days, Boris Johnson's premiership was over. But what about Pincher? He was suspended from the party and a committee recommended an 8-week suspension from Parliament. But before his constituents could boot him out through a recall petition, he voluntarily resigned as an MP. He never faced any criminal charges. The scandal brought down a Prime Minister, but not because of the original misconduct. It was the cover-up that proved fatal. Pincher himself walked away before the system could formally punish him. But even though this scandal did end up with consequences, it was only because an external backlash forced it. The public were dismayed by yet another scandal and Tory MPs had finally had enough. But nobody resigned out of principle. Both Johnson and Pincher resigned because it was a choice between that or a humiliating forced exit. The end result was going to be the same. They resigned because it's better to resign than to be sacked. They were made to. It wasn't because they accepted they'd fallen foul of the rules and should fall on their sword. And all of these cases are fully deliberate. hacking an MP's computer, climbing lampposts, parties during lockdown, giving public contracts to friends and donors with no oversight, disbanding the Standards Committee to avoid consequences for literal corruption, protecting a sex predator. They all knew they were breaking the rules. They all did it anyway because they have no respect for the rules. The Tories are grade A hypocrites, and Labour should point this every time it comes up. And while they're at it, maybe ask why the Daily Mail are so interested in the housing antics of Labour ministers, but aren't bothering to ask who paid for Nigel Farage's Clacton house. Maybe Starmer needs to start name-dropping Leveson in future press conferences. How about that? I don't know whether he is or is not thinking about press reform this Parliament, but I see no harm in musing on it now and then openly, if the press insist on being this blatantly biased. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.